Air pollution is actually caused in certain times of the year in certain parts of the world. For example, in Delhi, the typical time would be when the temperatures start to cool down and there is a certain amount of humidity in the air. So you need two things. So cold temperature, relatively cold temperature, a relatively high humidity, and no air drift, no lateral air drift. So of course, you have to have the pollutants to trap the air within, say, 80 to 100 meters of the ground level. So all the particulate matters, whether it is vehicular pollution, industrial pollution, fossil fuel burning, all these things, or the dust which comes up in the air by even cleaning construction sites, all that dust gets trapped in this humid and coldish temperature, and lack of air drift doesn't dissipate this pollution into the higher atmosphere. So it gets trapped in about 80 to 100 meters from the ground level. So for example, if you're taking a flight, if you go beyond this, everything is absolutely clear, and you look down, it is all brown because of the dust and the pollution. Now what is contained in this pollution? It is the PM 2.5, particulate matter 2.5. When I say 2.5, it means less than 2.5 micron size particles. And PM 10 is larger particle, less than 10 micron is PM 10. And you have sulfur dioxide, you have nitrogen dioxide, you have ammonia, you have ozone, you have carbon monoxide, and you have lead. So all these things, they not only are present, but then when there is sun ray hitting these suspended particles, it also leads to certain chemical reactions. So certain other things are also generated, so we don't know exactly what other chemical constituents we are breathing in with every breath. So these are the constituents which have been established. And when we say AQI, air quality index, which it is 300 today, it's 350 today, or it's 200. This is the constellation of 8 of these parameters which I just mentioned, 8 of them put together, and then they calculate by mathematical calculations what is the current minute to minute air quality index in different parts of the city. So this is a specific. There are certain general things, but there are certain specific things for certain areas. For example, Delhi would have those ingredients which I just mentioned, but if you're talking about Arabian Peninsula, then the pollution there is of different type. When it is windy, the desert storms, they cause a dust particle which is a larger sized particle, and the gases are less in that, but the particulate matter is very high. Chile, for example, would have a different type of composition, so it is specific for specific areas. But in Delhi, of course, the vehicular pollution, the construction sites, the industrial pollution, and the dust which goes up, these are the most common things, in the chemical factories and all those things. Even these smelting of the gases that are produced, they all go up in the atmosphere and get trapped. So the thing is that you don't see pollution in Delhi, for example, in the month of March or April, because neither the temperatures are going up, the humidity is going down, and there is good amount of air drift. Winds are blowing, so you don't see pollution at all. Practically very little, nothing in the months of March and April. So then what is the remedy? I mean, what can you do about it? That is the issue. At the government level, they have to take a lot of steps to make sure. They can't change the temperature, they can't change the humidity, but they can remove the industry from the city to at least 50 kilometers away. That is one step. Fossil fuel burning, the burning of the fields, that should be stopped. I mean, it can have large ramification to within a 100 to 200 kilometers area. So that should be stopped as much as possible. And the vehicles, they have already done unleaded usage of petrol now. So at least the lead is taken care. But all the pollutant vehicles, they would continue to generate pollution. So they have to do something about that. Now, coming to indoor pollution. So we are talking all the time talking about the outdoor pollution. We don't realize there is almost as much indoor pollution that we are inhaling every second of the day with every breath. So if, for example, the number of deaths in the world is 7 million a year due to pollution, then it is about 55% is due to outdoor pollution and 45% is been attributed to indoor pollution. So burning of coal, fuel, in villages, for example, the smoke, that leads to a lot of issues, leading to a lot of complications and diseases. The diseases that it can cause: bronchitis, asthma, COPD, cancers of lung, throat, oropharynx, and even cancer of the urinary bladder, the kidney, even the liver. They are all increased over the last 2-3 decades, 4 decades. The numbers are rising, and they are partially attributed to the increase in pollution. Then cardiovascular diseases. The pollution also leads to the coronary artery disease, hardening of the blood vessels, not only to the heart but also to the brain. It also increases the blood pressure by stiffening the blood vessels. So the incidence of stroke, brain stroke, is increased, heart attack is increased, and atherosclerosis is increased. So all these are the consequence of pollution. Well, at the level of the government, they probably can have huge air purifiers in so many different parts of the city. They need thousands of them. There was one which was put up earlier, and the government made a big news out of it. But you need thousands of them if you really want to have a significant impact on the air quality when you're walking around or driving around in the city. Then there are guns, which throws water droplets, micro water droplets, and this is to help the particulate matter settle down on the ground by humidifying it, by the spray of the water. But then again, you need thousands of them in the city. Keeping one in central Delhi doesn't help anybody anyway. So that is one issue at the government level, besides other things we talked. And at personal level, if the pollution level is high, we do not recommend people to do outdoor jogging, running, or physical exercise, because when you're exercising your lungs, then you're inhaling much more rapidly, much more deeply, and you're actually taking much more pollutants in your lungs at that time. And it is through the lungs that eventually they will reach the bloodstream and into the brain, the heart, and everywhere else, and excreted into the kidney, the urinary bladder, and as well as the liver. So if you're going out in a high polluted atmosphere, you should be using mask, preferably multi-layered mask, just like N95, because that will filter out a large part of PM10, the larger size particles, even the PM2.5, to quite an extent it will be able to filter it out. So usage of mask is recommended in high pollution zones. Within home, we recommend using of air purifiers. Now, particularly in those people who are suffering from lung diseases or heart diseases or cardiovascular diseases, or who is having other comorbidities, interstitial lung diseases, where the respiratory system is already compromised. So you don't want them to lower their oxygen through breathing bad air and causing more risk of infection inside the lungs. So air purifiers do help. You can actually see the digital number of the air quality index, or it can also tell you a PM10. It's written there. Is it measuring PM10 or what is it measuring? Or it can also give you an indication through green light, orange light, and red light. Red light means the pollution levels are very high. Then gradually, if you use it for, let's say, about 5-10 minutes, it turns into orange and then blue. But when you're using the air purifier at home, make sure the doors and the windows are closed. If they are not closed, then you will notice that within 5 to 10 minutes of opening the doors, it will again become red. So because you're allowing the polluted air to immediately come in and mix up there. So the best way to use air purifier is in your bedrooms, where you spend at least 10 to 12 hours, including your sleep time there in 24 hours. So at least during that period, you can have a much better quality of air. There has been a question whether the mask, if it is a wet mask, does it help more? Yes, a wet mask would be able to help filter out even the smaller particles better. So that is another thing. So just these are the precautions which we generally ask people to take regarding mask, regarding avoiding exercises outdoor, and using air purifier, especially those people who are suffering from these diseases.